The morning sun cast long shadows across the settlement of New Haven when the first explosion shook the ground. Sergeant Kim Dae-ho dropped his coffee cup and grabbed his rifle in one smooth motion. Around him, other human Marines scrambled to their positions as sirens wailed across the colony. "Ravagers!" someone shouted. Massive swarm coming from the east. Dae-ho sprinted toward the command center, his boots pounding against the metal walkways. New Haven was supposed to be safe. The joint human Valdari settlement had been peaceful for 3 years. The Valdari were strange allies, looking like upright wolves with silver fur and glowing eyes. But they were good fighters. Together, both species had built something worth protecting on this distant world. The command center buzzed with activity. Holographic displays showed red dots swarming toward the colony like angry ants. Colonel Lee Hyun-woo stood at the main console, his face grim. "How many?" Dae-ho asked as he reached the colonel. "Too many," Lee replied. "At least 10,000 Ravagers, maybe more. They came out of nowhere. Our sensors didn't pick them up until they were almost on top of us." Dae-ho studied the tactical display. The insectoid aliens were moving fast, their chittering swarm covering the ground like a black tide. Ravagers were mindless killers that ate everything in their path. They had no technology beyond their natural weapons, but they didn't need it. Their numbers were their strength. "What about the Valdari?" Dae-ho asked. "Fighting on the north side," Colonel Lee said. "Their warriors are holding the line, but barely. We need to evacuate the civilians now." Dae-ho nodded and gathered his squad. 8 good Marines, all veterans of previous Ravager attacks. They knew what needed to be done. The evacuation routes led to underground bunkers that could withstand a siege. But first they had to buy time for the families to reach safety. The sound of gunfire echoed through the settlement as Dae-ho led his team toward the residential district. Valdari warriors ran past them, their long legs carrying them swiftly toward the battle. Even in crisis, Dae-ho admired how graceful they moved. Each warrior carried traditional weapons alongside modern guns. It was part of their culture, something about honor in ancient ways. "Sergeant," Private Park Jin-ho called out. "Civilians trapped in Sector 7. Dae-ho changed direction, leading his squad through narrow streets between prefab buildings. The sound of Ravager shrieks grew louder. The aliens made a horrible noise when they attacked, like metal scraping against stone. It was designed to cause fear, and it worked. They found the trapped civilians huddled in a damaged building. A family of 5 humans and 3 Valdari, including 2 children. The building's exit had been blocked by debris from an explosion. "Get them out," Dae-ho ordered. His Marines began clearing the rubble while he watched for threats. The Valdari mother spoke in her musical language to her frightened child. Despite being from different species, fear looked the same on every face. A new sound made Dae-ho turn. Combat was moving closer. Through the smoke, he could see shapes moving between buildings. Some were human Marines falling back. Others were Valdari warriors in fighting retreat. And behind them came the Ravagers. Ravagers looked like giant insects, crossed with nightmares. They walked on 6 legs, had razor-sharp claws and mouths full of teeth that could bite through metal. Their black shells reflected light like oil, and their eyes glowed red with hunger. Worst of all, they were smart enough to use tactics. "Hurry up," Dae-ho shouted to his team. The civilians were almost free, but the Ravagers were getting closer. That's when he saw her. A Valdari warrior was fighting alone against 5 Ravagers in the street ahead. She moved like liquid silver, her sword dancing through the air as she held them back. But Dae-ho could see she was wounded. Purple blood stained her armor, and she was slowing down. The Valdari warrior made a desperate slash at the nearest Ravager, cutting deep into its shell, but the effort left her open. Another Ravager struck with its claws, sending her flying against a wall. She hit hard and didn't get up. The Ravagers moved toward her fallen form, their claws clicking against the ground. Dae-ho didn't think. He just ran. "Covering fire," he yelled to his squad. Gunshots rang out behind him as his Marines engaged the Ravagers. Dae-ho sprinted toward the fallen warrior, his rifle spitting bullets at the aliens surrounding her. The Valdari woman was unconscious, but still breathing. Up close, Daeho could see she was young, maybe equivalent to a human in their 20s. Her silver fur was matted with purple blood, and her armor was cracked. But what caught his attention was the sword lying beside her. It wasn't like any weapon Daeho had seen before. The blade seemed to glow with soft blue light, and symbols were carved into the metal. Even unconscious, the Valdari woman's hand was reaching toward it. A Ravager leaped at Daeho from the side. He rolled away, but his rifle was knocked from his hands. The alien landed where he had been standing, its claws gouging deep marks in the ground. More Ravagers were coming, drawn by the noise of battle. Daeho looked at his rifle, too far away to reach. He looked at the Ravagers closing in. Then he looked at the glowing sword. He grabbed the weapon. The moment his fingers touched the handle, everything changed. The sword felt alive in his hands, warm and light as a feather. Energy flowed through his arms, and suddenly he could sense the Ravagers around him with perfect clarity. He knew where they would attack before they moved. The first Ravager lunged at him. Daeho's body moved without conscious thought, the sword cutting through the air in a perfect arc. The blade passed through the alien's shell like it was made of paper. The Ravager fell in 2 pieces. Another alien attacked from behind. Daeho spun, the sword leaving a trail of blue light as it moved. Again, the blade cut through chitin and flesh with impossible ease. The Ravager collapsed, its death shriek echoing off the buildings. More Ravagers came, but Daeho was ready. The sword guided his movements, showing him exactly where to strike. He felt like he was dancing, each step perfectly placed, each cut precisely aimed. The blade sang through the air, leaving death in its wake. Within minutes, 8 Ravagers lay dead around him. Purple blood mixed with black alien ichor on the ground. Daeho stood among the corpses, the glowing sword still humming in his hands. He was breathing hard but uninjured. "Holy shit," Private Park whispered from behind him. "Sarge, how did you do that?" Daeho looked down at the sword. The blue glow was fading, but he could still feel power thrumming through the weapon. He had never used a blade in combat before, yet he had fought like a master swordsman. It didn't make sense. "I don't know," he said honestly. The sound of approaching footsteps made him turn. A group of Valdari warriors was running toward them, led by an older male with scars across his muzzle. They stopped when they saw Daeho holding the sword, their expressions shifting from relief to shock. The lead Valdari spoke in rapid musical tones to his companions. Daeho didn't understand the words, but the tone sounded urgent, almost frightened. The warriors looked at him like he had grown a second head. "Human," the scarred warrior said in accented English. "Put down the blade. Carefully." "It's okay," Daeho said, raising his hands. "I was just helping her." He nodded toward the unconscious female warrior. "The Ravagers were going to kill her." "You do not understand," the Valdari said. His eyes were wide with something that looked like awe mixed with terror. "That is Moon Whisper, the ancestral blade of the Silver Fang clan. No one can wield it except—" He trailed off, staring at Daeho with growing amazement. "Except what?" Daeho asked. Before the warrior could answer, the female Valdari stirred. Her violet eyes opened slowly, focusing on Daeho's face. She tried to sit up, winced, and looked around at the dead Ravagers. Then her gaze fell on the sword in his hands. Her reaction was immediate and intense. She gasped, her eyes going even wider than the other warriors. She spoke rapidly in her own language, her voice filled with disbelief. "What is she saying?" Daeho asked. The scarred warrior translated, his voice barely above a whisper. "She asks how a human came to wield the blade of her bloodline. She asks if the ancient prophecies are true." "Prophecies?" Daeho was getting confused. "Look, I just picked up the sword to defend her. I didn't know it was special." "Special?" The female warrior struggled to her feet, supported by one of her companions. "Moon Whisper has been in my family for 1,000 years. It has never responded to anyone outside my clan. Never responded to anyone who was not." She stopped talking and stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. "Not what?" Daeho asked. The sound of explosions in the distance reminded everyone that they were still in the middle of a battle. The scarred warrior looked torn between amazement and urgency. "We must go," he said. "The evacuation is not complete. But human, you must come with us. What has happened here? It changes things. It changes everything." Deho looked down at Moonwhisper one more time. The blade had saved his life, and the life of the Valdari warrior. But from the way the aliens were looking at him, he suspected it had done something else as well. Something he didn't understand yet. "Here," he said, offering the sword back to the female warrior. "This belongs to you." She stared at the weapon, but didn't take it. I cannot," she said. "Not now. The blade has chosen. Until we understand what this means, you must keep it." "I don't understand." "Neither do I," she admitted. 3 days after the battle, Deho sat in the medical bay watching Sora sleep. The Valdari woman had been unconscious for most of that time, her body healing from the wounds she had taken fighting the Ravagers. Her silver fur had lost its luster, and purple bruises marked her arms where the aliens had struck her. The doctor said she would recover fully, but it would take time. Valdari healed faster than humans, but they still needed rest after serious injuries. Moonwhisper lay across Deho's lap as he kept watch. He had tried to give the sword back to the other Valdari warriors, but they all refused to take it. They looked at him with the same mix of awe and fear he had seen during the battle. Some wouldn't even meet his eyes. "Still don't understand it, do you?" Deho looked up to see Colonel Lee approaching. The older man looked tired. They all did. The battle for New Haven had lasted 18 hours and the cleanup was still ongoing. The Ravagers were all dead, but the damage to the settlement was severe. "Understand what, sir?" Deho asked. Lee pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. "The Valdari have been asking about you. A lot. Their leadership wants to meet with you as soon as Sora wakes up." "About the sword?" "About more than that." Lee rubbed his temples. "I've been talking to their diplomatic staff. This blade you picked up, it's not just a weapon. It's some kind of religious artifact. Only certain people can use it." Deho looked down at Moonwhisper. The sword looked ordinary now, just metal and crystal, but he could still remember how it felt when he held it during the fight, like it was part of him. "What kind of certain people?" he asked. "That's what they want to explain to you." Lee stood up. "But Deho, I need you to understand something. This colony depends on our alliance with the Valdari. Without them, we can't hold this world. Whatever this sword business is about, we need to handle it carefully." Before Deho could respond, Sora stirred on the medical bed. Her violet eyes opened slowly, focusing on his face. She tried to sit up, then winced and settled back against the pillows. "You're awake," Deho said. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was trampled by a herd of mountain beasts," she replied. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "But alive, thanks to you." Her gaze fell on Moonwhisper. "You still carry my clan's blade. Your people won't take it back." "Because they cannot." Sora struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain. "We need to talk, Kim Deho. You and I and my grandfather. What happened during the battle? It has consequences." An hour later, Deho found himself in the Valdari quarter of New Haven. The alien section of the settlement was different from the human areas. The buildings were taller and more curved, designed to accommodate the Valdari's greater height. Symbols were carved into the walls, and the air smelled of strange spices. Sora walked beside him, moving slowly but steadily. She had insisted on leaving the medical bay despite the doctor's protests. Her clan's honor demanded that she be present for what was coming. They entered a large building at the center of the quarter. Inside, the main hall was filled with Valdari of all ages. Warriors in armor stood next to civilians in flowing robes. All of them watched Deho with intense curiosity. At the far end of the hall sat an elderly Valdari on a raised platform. His fur was white with age and scars covered his arms and face. but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. This had to be Sora's grandfather. "Honorable Elder Yoon Taemin," Sora said, bowing deeply. "I present Kim Dae-ho, the human who wielded Moon Whisper in my defense." The old Valdari studied Dae-ho for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of age and wisdom. "Kim Dae-ho of the humans, you have done something that should not be possible. For 1,000 years, Moon Whisper has been the blade of my bloodline. It has never responded to an outsider, never responded to anyone who was not chosen by fate itself." "I just picked it up," Dae-ho said. "I didn't know it was special, but it knew you were special." Taemin stood slowly, his age showing in his movements. "Tell me, human, what did you feel when you first touched the blade?" Dae-ho thought, back to that moment in the street. The warmth, the energy, the way the sword seemed to guide his movements. It felt alive, like it was helping me fight. Murmurs ran through the gathered Valdari. Taemin nodded grimly. "The blade chooses its wielder. This is the foundation of our most sacred law. Moon Whisper has been passed down through my family for 40 generations, always to the one it recognizes as worthy." He paused, his gaze intense. "But there is more. The blade only responds to one who is destined to be bonded with its current bearer." "Bonded?" Dae-ho looked at Sora, who had gone very still beside him. "Mated," Taemin said bluntly. "Married, in your human terms. The blade recognizes the soul that is meant to join with its bearer's soul. By wielding Moon Whisper successfully, you have completed the first part of the Veltharok, the binding ritual." The hall fell silent. Dae-ho felt like the floor had dropped away beneath his feet. "Married?" he repeated. "But I'm human. She's Valdari. That's not... We can't..." "The blade cares nothing for species," Taemin said. "It sees the soul, not the flesh, and it has chosen you for my granddaughter." Sora stepped forward, her face pale. "Grandfather, surely there must be some mistake. The ancient laws were written before we knew of other intelligent species. They cannot apply to..." "The laws are clear," Taemin interrupted. "The blade has chosen. To refuse the binding now would bring shame upon our entire clan. Worse, it would mean that Moon Whisper might never respond to another wielder. Our family's honor would be destroyed." Colonel Lee, who had been standing quietly near the entrance, cleared his throat. "With respect, Elder Taemin, Sergeant Kim is a human soldier. He has duties to his own people. Surely some accommodation can be made." "The laws of bonding supersede all other obligations," Taemin replied. "But I understand this is difficult for all involved. Therefore, I propose a trial period. Kim Dae-ho will remain in our quarter for 1 month, learning our ways and customs. Sora will teach him what it means to be part of a Valdari clan. At the end of that time, if they both choose to proceed, the full bonding ceremony will take place." "And if we choose not to proceed?" Sora asked. Taemin's expression grew sad. "Then you will both be marked as oathbreakers. You, granddaughter, will be cast out from the clan, and Kim Dae-ho will never be welcome among our people again. The alliance between our species would suffer greatly." Dae-ho looked around the hall. Every Valdari eye was focused on him. He could feel the weight of their expectations, their traditions, their laws, but he also saw something else in their faces. Hope, fear, the desperate need for this to work out somehow. "This is insane," he said quietly. "Yes," Sora agreed. "It is. But refusing would hurt a lot of people." "Yes," she said again. Dae-ho looked at her, really looked at her. Sora was beautiful in an alien way with her silver fur and violet eyes. But more than that, he remembered how she had fought during the battle. Her courage, her skill, her willingness to die protecting others. Those were qualities he respected, regardless of species. 1 month? He asked. 1 month. Taemin confirmed. "And at the end we both get to choose?" "You both get to choose," the elder agreed. "Though I should warn you, very few who are chosen by the blade ultimately refuse the bonding. The connection goes deeper than conscious decision. Deho felt Moon Whisper's weight at his side. The sword was warm against his leg, almost purring with contentment. Maybe the old Valdari was right. Maybe there were forces at work here that he didn't understand. "All right," he said finally. "I'll try it, but I need to talk to my commanding officer first." Colonel Lee nodded. "I'll arrange for your transfer to cultural liaison duties. This situation is too important to handle any other way." Sora looked at Deho with an expression he couldn't read. "You are willing to do this, to learn our ways?" "I'm willing to try," he said. "You saved civilians during the battle. You put your life on the line for people who weren't even your species. That counts for something. And you did the same for me," she replied softly. As the formal ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Deho found himself alone with Sora in a small side chamber. She was staring out a window at the human section of the settlement. "I want you to know," she said without turning around, "that I never wanted this either. I had plans for my life that did not include being bonded to anyone, let alone a human. I barely know." "What kind of plans?" "I wanted to be a warrior, to lead my clan's soldiers in battle, to earn my place through deeds, not through some ancient ritual involving a sword." She turned to face him. The bonding would change everything. A mated female is expected to focus on family, on raising young. My dreams of military leadership would end. Deho could hear the pain in her voice. "Maybe we can find another way. Maybe the laws can be changed." "Maybe," she said, though she didn't sound convinced. "But for now, we must play the roles we have been given. I will teach you our customs, and you will try to understand our people. At least then, whatever we decide, it will be an informed choice." "Fair enough." Deho extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. "Partners?" Sora looked at his hand for a moment, then took it in her own. Her palm was warm and slightly rough from years of sword work. "Partners," she agreed. As their hands touched, Moon Whisper pulsed with soft blue light. Both of them looked down at the sword in surprise. Deho stared at the bowl of what looked like purple soup and tried not to grimace. Across the small table, Sora watched him with barely hidden amusement. "It's not going to bite you," she said. "It's just breakfast." "What kind of breakfast?" Deho asked, poking the thick liquid with his spoon. Something that might have been a vegetable floated to the surface, though it was unlike any vegetable he had ever seen. "Nutritious breakfast," Sora replied. "The kind that will keep you strong for today's training." It had been a week since Deho moved into the Valdari quarter of New Haven. His new quarters were next to Sora's in a building reserved for unmarried clan members. The rooms were larger than human standards but felt strange with their curved walls and high ceilings. Everything was designed for people who were taller and more graceful than humans. The food was the least of his problems. Deho took a tentative sip of the soup. It tasted like mushrooms mixed with something sweet and something that burned his tongue. Not terrible, but definitely not human food. "Good?" Sora asked. "Different," he said diplomatically. She laughed, and he was surprised by how pleasant the sound was. In the week since they had started this arrangement, Sora had begun to relax around him. She was still formal and proper, but sometimes her guard dropped and he could see glimpses of the person beneath the warrior facade. "You will get used to it," she said, "just as I got used to human coffee, though I still think it tastes like bitter water." "Coffee is supposed to be bitter," Deho protested. "That's the point. Humans have strange ideas about what constitutes good flavor." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Through the window, Deho could see other Valdari moving through the streets, beginning their daily routines. Children played in small groups, their fur patterns marking them as members of different families. Adults gathered at market stalls, their musical language creating a constant background hum. "What's on the schedule today?" he asked. "Combat training this morning," Sora said. "You need to learn proper sword techniques if you're going to carry Moon Whisper. This afternoon, we meet with the clan elders to discuss bonding traditions." Deho had been dreading that meeting all week. The bonding traditions were complex and intimate, involving ceremonies that made him uncomfortable. But it was part of learning Valdari culture, so he would have to endure it. And tonight, he asked. Tonight is the Feast of Remembrance. The entire clan gathers to honor our ancestors. Sora's expression grew serious. It will be your first major social event as a potential clan member. Many will be watching to see how you behave. Great. More pressure. They finished breakfast and walked to the training grounds together. The Valdari combat arena was an open space surrounded by curved walls. Other warriors were already there, practicing with various weapons. Some used traditional swords and spears, while others trained with modern energy weapons. Kale was waiting for them near the center of the arena. The young Valdari warrior was about Sora's age, with dark gray fur and amber eyes. He was also clearly not happy about Deho's presence in the clan. Sora, Kyle said, bowing slightly, and the human who thinks he can be Valdari. Kyle, Sora replied with a warning tone. Kim Deho is here to learn. You will treat him with respect. Of course. Kyle's smile didn't reach his eyes. I would never be disrespectful to one chosen by Moonwhisper, even if that choice makes no sense. Deho kept his expression neutral. He had dealt with hostile colleagues before. Kyle's attitude was nothing new, just wrapped in alien courtesy. I'm here to learn, Deho said simply. Nothing more. Then let us see what you can learn, Kale said. He drew his own sword, a weapon that gleamed with the same blue light as Moonwhisper. Sora tells me you fought well during the Ravager attack. But fighting mindless insects is different from facing a trained warrior. Sora looked between them, with growing concern. Kale, this is meant to be a training session, not a challenge. All training is challenge, Kale replied. He settled into a combat stance. Unless the human is afraid? Deho sighed and drew Moonwhisper. The sword felt warm and alive in his hands just as it had during the battle. Around them, other warriors stopped their own training to watch. I'm not afraid, Deho said, but I don't want to hurt you. Kyle's eyes flashed with anger at the perceived insult. He moved fast, his sword cutting through the air in a complex pattern. Deho barely got Moonwhisper up in time to block the attack. The two blades met with a ringing sound that echoed through the arena. Sparks flew where the weapons touched, and Deho felt the impact run up his arms. Kale was strong, much stronger than a human. But as they began to fight in earnest, Deho felt the familiar sensation of Moonwhisper guiding his movements. The sword seemed to know what Kale would do before he did it. When the Valdari warrior attacked high, Deho was all ready, moving to block low. When Kale tried a spinning strike, Deho was behind him, the flat of his blade tapping the warrior's ribs. Point, Sora called out. Kale snarled and came at him again, faster this time. His technique was flawless, each movement flowing into the next like a deadly dance. But Moonwhisper was faster, predicting and countering every attack. Within minutes, Deho had scored 3 more touches. Kyle was breathing hard and growing frustrated. His attacks became wilder, less controlled. Enough, Sora said, stepping between them. This was meant to be instruction, not a duel. Kyle lowered his sword, his amber eyes burning with humiliation. Around them, the other warriors murmured among themselves. A human had just outfought one of their best young swordsmen. How? Kale demanded. You have no training, no technique. You fight like a beginner. The blade teaches, Deho said, though he wasn't entirely sure what that meant. I can feel it guiding me. The blade teaches only those it accepts, an older voice said from the edge of the arena. Everyone turned to see Elder Taemin approaching. Moonwhisper has bonded with Kim Deho in ways we do not fully understand. Kale sheathed his sword with barely controlled anger. This violates every tradition we hold sacred. A human cannot simply pick up our ancestral weapon and become one of us. And yet, Taemin said mildly, that is exactly what has happened. The blade has chosen. We must accept what we cannot change. I will never accept it, Kale declared. He looked directly at Deho. You may carry our sword, human, but you will never be truly Valdari. You will never understand what it means to be part of our people. With that, he stalked away, leaving tension thick in the air. Don't mind Kale. Sora said quietly. He has been interested in me since we were children. This situation is difficult for him. He's in love with you, Deho realized. Perhaps, or perhaps he simply cannot accept change. She watched Kale's retreating form. Either way, you handled that well. You could have humiliated him, but you chose restraint. Fighting isn't about humiliation, Deho said. It's about protecting people. Something in Sora's expression shifted. For just a moment, she looked at him with what might have been respect. That afternoon's meeting with the clan elders was even more uncomfortable than Deho had expected. The bonding traditions involved sharing personal histories, discussing family expectations, and learning intimate customs that made his face burn with embarrassment. Elder Timon explained that bonded pairs were expected to be completely honest with each other, to share not just their lives but their deepest thoughts and fears. The idea of such openness with someone he barely knew was terrifying. In human culture, Deho said carefully, we usually get to know each other gradually. This level of closeness takes time to develop. Time we may not have, Taemin replied. The bonding ceremony must take place within the month, or the opportunity will be lost forever. Moon Whisper will withdraw its acceptance, and the shame will follow our clan for generations. By evening, Deho was exhausted and overwhelmed. The Feast of Remembrance was held in the Great Hall, with the entire Silver Fang clan in attendance. Long tables were arranged in a circle, loaded with traditional foods and decorated with symbols of their ancestors. Deho found himself seated between Sora and her cousin, a female warrior named Vera. The conversation flowed around him in a mix of Valdari and heavily accented English. He understood perhaps half of what was said, but he tried to follow along. The feast began with ritual toasts to clan members who had died in battle. Each name was spoken with reverence, followed by a drink of strong Valdari wine that burned his throat. By the fourth toast, Deho was feeling lightheaded. Easy, Sora murmured. The wine is stronger than human alcohol. I noticed, he said, trying not to cough. As the evening continued, various clan members stood to tell stories of their ancestors. The tales were full of honor and sacrifice, of warriors who chose death over dishonor, of leaders who put their clan's needs above their own desires. Finally, Taemin stood to address the gathering. Tonight, we welcome a potential new member to our clan. Kim Deho has been chosen by Moon Whisper itself to bond with my granddaughter. Though he is human, the blade sees something in him that we must respect. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some sounded approving, others less so. Kim Deho, Taemin continued, will you speak to us? Will you tell us why you seek to join our clan? Deho stood slowly, very aware that every eye in the room was on him. The wine made him feel bold, or maybe just reckless. The emergency klaxon woke Deho before dawn. He rolled out of bed, grabbed Moon Whisper, and was dressed in full combat gear within minutes. Through his window, he could see lights flashing throughout both the human and Valdari sections of New Haven. Emergency lights always meant the same thing. Trouble was coming. Sora was already waiting for him in the corridor, her own armor gleaming in the dim light. Over the past 3 weeks, they had developed an easy partnership that went beyond their forced cultural arrangement. She was a skilled warrior and tactical thinker, while he brought human adaptability and unconventional strategies to their joint missions. What's the situation? He asked as they ran toward the command center. Long-range sensors picked up a massive fleet approaching the system, she replied. Bigger than anything we've seen before. They reached the central command building to find organized chaos. Human and Valdari officers worked side by side at control stations, coordinating defenses across multiple worlds. The main holographic display showed the outer system, where red dots indicated incoming hostiles. Colonel Lee spotted them and waved them over. Glad you're here. We need your team for a special mission. How special? Deho asked, studying the tactical display. The enemy fleet was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the previous Ravager attacks. Very special, a new voice said. General Nam Wu-jin approached, his expression grim. Deho knew the general by reputation, a hard line, military leader who had always been skeptical about the human-Valdari alliance. We've identified the source of the Ravager swarms. The display zoomed in on the largest ship in the enemy fleet. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, with a twisted, organic appearance that hurt to look at directly. The Queen ship. Sora breathed. I thought they were a myth. Not a myth, General Nam said. Intelligence suggests that all Ravager swarms are controlled by a single Queen entity aboard that vessel. Kill the Queen, and the entire swarm becomes mindless. Easy to mop up afterward. And you want us to infiltrate that ship? Deho guessed. You and a joint strike team, Colonel Lee confirmed. It's a suicide mission, but it's our only chance. The main fleet will create a distraction while your team gets inside and takes out the Queen. Sora stepped closer to the display. What kind of defenses are we looking at? Unknown, General Nam admitted. We've never gotten close enough to that ship to scan it properly, but intelligence suggests the Queen is psychic, capable of controlling thousands of Ravagers simultaneously. Psychic? Deho felt a chill run down his spine. Like reading minds? More like projecting thoughts, a familiar voice said from behind them. Dr. Choi Mi-young approached, carrying a datapad. The xenobiologist had been studying Ravager behavior since the first attacks. The Queen doesn't read minds so much as overwrite them. She turns other creatures into extensions of her will. Wonderful, Deho muttered. So we're going up against a mind control alien the size of a moon. It gets worse, Dr. Choi continued. Our analysis suggests the Ravagers aren't randomly attacking colonies. They're specifically targeting joint human-Valdari settlements. Someone or something is directing them to break our alliance. The implications hit Deho immediately. They're trying to divide us, make us turn on each other. Which is why this mission is so important, General Nam said. The strike team needs to include both humans and Valdari, proof that our species can work together even under the worst circumstances. Sora studied the tactical data. How do we get aboard that ship? Stealth shuttles will drop you on the surface, Colonel Lee explained. From there, you'll need to fight your way to the Queen's chamber. The mission is being planned by both our command structures. Who else is on the team? Deho asked. 8 volunteers total, 4 human marines, 4 Valdari warriors. You two will be team leaders. Over the next several hours, Deho and Sora worked together to plan the mission. The other team members were all veterans, humans he had served with for years and Valdari warriors who had proven themselves in previous battles. Private Park Jin-ho was among the human volunteers, grinning despite the obvious danger. Wouldn't miss it, Sarge. Besides, someone needs to watch your back when you're doing crazy sword stunts. The Valdari team included Kale, who had volunteered despite his personal feelings about Deho. When confronted about it, the warrior had simply said, "The clan's honor matters more than my personal grievances." As they prepared for departure, Sora pulled Deho aside. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "If we don't survive this mission—" "Don't talk like that," he interrupted. "We're coming back." "If we don't survive," she continued, firmly, "I want you to know that these past 3 weeks have been unexpected. I thought I would hate being forced into this bonding arrangement. But working with you, learning to trust you, it has been different than I imagined." Deho felt something twist in his chest. Over the weeks, his own feelings had grown complicated. Sora was brave, intelligent, and dedicated to protecting others. More than that, they had developed an easy partnership that felt natural despite their different species. "Sora," he began. "The shuttles are ready," Kale interrupted from behind them. "Time to go." The stealth shuttles were cramped, designed to avoid detection rather than comfort. Deho found himself pressed against Sora as they hurtled through space toward the massive Queen ship. Through the small viewport, he could see the main battle beginning as human and Valdari fleets engaged the Ravager swarms. "Look at that," Park whispered, pointing out the window. The Queen ship was even more massive up close, its organic surface pulsing with veins of sickly light. Smaller Ravager ships swarmed around it like insects around a hive. As they watched, New swarms launched from ports along the ship's sides. Readings indicate the hull is partially biological, their pilot reported. We should be able to cut through it once we land. The shuttle touched down on a relatively flat section of the ship's surface. Immediately, the team began setting up cutting charges to create an entrance. The organic hull writhed under their tools as if it were alive and in pain. "That's disgusting," Park muttered as purple fluid leaked from the cuts. They dropped through the hull into a corridor that looked more like the inside of a living creature than a spaceship. The walls pulsed with the rhythm of a massive heartbeat, and the air was thick with moisture. "Stay together," Deho ordered, "and watch for his." Warning was cut off as Ravagers poured out of side passages. But these weren't like the mindless swarms they had fought before. These moved with purpose and coordination, working together like a military unit. The battle was intense but brief. Moonwhisper sang through the air, cutting through chitin and flesh with deadly efficiency. Beside him, Sora fought with borrowed weapons, her natural grace deadly in the confined space. The combined human Valdari team worked like a single organism, each member covering the others. "This way," Kale called out, following readings on his scanner. The Queen's chamber should be at the ship's center. They fought through corridor after corridor, each one stranger than the last. Some walls were lined with cocoons containing partially digested creatures from dozens of different worlds. Others pulsed with organic machinery that seemed to blend technology with living tissue. "It's like the entire ship is alive," Sora observed. "Because it is." Dr. Choi's voice crackled over their comm units. "Our scans show the whole vessel is a single organism. The Queen isn't just commanding it, she is it." As they moved deeper into the ship, Deho began to feel pressure in his head. It started as a mild headache but grew stronger with each step. Around him, the other team members were beginning to show signs of discomfort as well. "Mental pressure, increasing," one of the Valdari reported. "The Queen is trying to get into our minds." "Resist it," Deho ordered, though he wasn't sure how. The pressure in his skull was becoming painful, and he could hear whispers at the edge of his consciousness, whispers that promised rest, peace, surrender. Sora stumbled beside him, her eyes unfocused. "She's so strong," she gasped. "I can feel her trying to take control." That's when Moonwhisper began to glow. The sword's blue light cut through the mental fog like a beacon. Wherever the light touched, the psychic pressure lessened. Deho realized the blade was somehow protecting them from the Queen's mental influence. "Stay close to the sword," he ordered. "It's shielding us." They formed a tight group around Deho as they pressed deeper into the ship. The corridors began to widen, and the organic walls took on an even more alien appearance. Strange symbols pulsed with light, and the air grew thick with psychic energy. Finally, they reached the Queen's chamber. The room was enormous, its ceiling lost in darkness above. At the center sat the Ravager Queen, and she was nothing like what Deho had expected. Instead of a giant insect, she looked almost human, though pale and elongated. Cables and organic tubes connected her to the ship around them, making it impossible to tell where she ended and the vessel began. "Welcome," she said, her voice echoing inside their heads rather than through the air. "I have been waiting for you." "Waiting for us?" Sora asked, raising her weapon. "Specifically waiting for him." The Queen's attention focused on Deho, the human who carries a blade of power, the one who threatens to unite your species permanently. Deho felt the weight of her psychic attention. 6 months after the destruction of the Ravager Queen, Deho stood before a mirror in his quarters, adjusting the formal uniform he had never expected to wear. The ceremony was set to begin in an hour, and he was more nervous than he had been, facing the psychic alien Queen. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Park Jin-ho entered, grinning broadly. His friend had been promoted to corporal after the Queen ship mission, and the new rank suited him well. "Ready for the big day, Major?" "Major." Deho still felt strange hearing his Aikya, new rank. The promotion had come with a medal for heroism and a new assignment as head of Human Valdari Cultural Affairs. It was not a job he had ever imagined wanting, but recent events had changed many things. As ready as I can be, Deho replied. Though I still think this whole thing is crazy. Crazy good or crazy bad? Both. Deho turned from the mirror to face his friend. 6 months ago, I was a simple Marine sergeant. Now I'm about to participate in a ceremony that will officially unite two different species through marriage. How did my life get so complicated? You picked up a magic sword to save a pretty alien girl, Park said with a shrug. Everything else just followed from there. Another knock at the door announced the arrival of Dr. Choi Mi-young. The xenobiologist had become something of a friend over the past months, helping both him and So-Ra understand the scientific implications of their bond. The ceremonial preparations are complete, she reported. Both human and Valdari diplomatic corps are in attendance. This is going to be the most closely watched wedding in colonial history. No pressure, Deho muttered. Actually, quite a lot of pressure, Dr. Choi said seriously. Ambassador Shineri told me that officials from Earth are watching this ceremony as a test case for future interspecies cooperation. If it goes well, we might see expanded cultural exchange programs throughout human space. Through his window, Deho could see the preparations in the central plaza of New Haven. A stage had been erected that blended human and Valdari architectural styles. Seats were arranged for hundreds of guests from both species. In the distance, he could see shuttles arriving with dignitaries from other colonies. Is So-Ra ready? He asked. As ready as you are, Dr. Choi replied, which is to say, terrified but determined. Deho had seen little of So-Ra over the past week. Valdari tradition required the bonding partners to spend time apart before the ceremony, contemplating their decision and preparing mentally for the permanent joining of their lives. It had been harder than he expected, not seeing her every day. Over the months since their return from the queenship, their relationship had evolved from reluctant partnership to genuine friendship to something deeper. They had spent countless hours together, learning each other's languages and customs, sharing stories of their childhoods, discovering that despite their different species, they had remarkably similar values and goals. The attraction had grown gradually, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. So-Ra was intelligent, brave, and dedicated to protecting others. She challenged his assumptions and made him think about the world in new ways. More than that, she made him laugh, something he hadn't expected from an arranged bonding ceremony. Time to go, Park announced, checking his chronometer. Can't keep your alien bride waiting. The walk to the plaza felt both too long and too short. Human and Valdari civilians lined the streets, cheering and throwing flower petals as the wedding party passed. Children of both species ran alongside. The procession, excited by the pageantry. The plaza was packed with guests. Human officials in formal dress uniforms sat next to Valdari nobles in traditional robes. Representatives from a dozen different colonies had come to witness the ceremony. Even some of the more skeptical military leaders were present, including General Nam Wu-jin, who had been surprisingly supportive once he understood the strategic implications of the human-Valdari alliance. At the front of the gathering, Elder Taemin stood beside Ambassador Shin, ready to conduct the joint ceremony. Both human and Valdari customs would be observed, creating something new that honored both traditions. Deho took his place on the stage, Moonwhisper at his side. The sword had been specially prepared for the ceremony, its blade polished to mirror brightness and inscribed with symbols from both cultures. It would play a central role in the bonding ritual. Music began to play, a haunting melody that combined human instruments with Valdari harmonics. The crowd fell silent as So-Ra appeared at the far end of the plaza. She was beautiful. So-Ra wore traditional Valdari bonding robes that had been modified to incorporate human elements. The silver fabric caught the light as she moved, and the ceremonial jewelry at her throat and wrists chimed softly with each step. Her fur had been groomed to perfection, and her violet eyes seemed to glow with inner light. But more than her appearance, it was the way she carried herself that took Deho's breath away. So-Ra moved with the confidence of a warrior and the grace of a noble woman, her head held high despite the hundreds of eyes watching her every move. As she approached the stage, their eyes met. In that moment, all of Daeho's nervousness vanished. This was Sora, his partner, his friend, the person who had fought beside him against impossible odds and never once let him down. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Friends, allies, honored guests, Elder Taemin began, his voice carrying clearly across the plaza. Today we witness something unprecedented in the history of both our species, the formal bonding of Kim Daeho of the humans and Yoon Sora of the Vuldari Silver Fang clan. Ambassador Shin stepped forward. This ceremony represents more than the union of two individuals. It symbolizes the growing partnership between our peoples, the recognition that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. The ceremony itself was unlike anything either species had practiced before. Elements of human marriage tradition were woven together with Vuldari bonding rituals, creating something entirely new. Daeho and Sora exchanged vows in both languages, promising to honor each other's cultures while building something new together. When it came time for the exchange of tokens, Daeho presented Sora with a ring made from metals found on both human and Vuldari worlds. She gave him a traditional bonding necklace that incorporated human symbols alongside Vuldari ones. But the most significant moment came when Elder Taemin called for the ritual of the blade. Moon Whisper has been the symbol of the Silver Fang clan for 40 generations, the elder announced. Today it becomes something new, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of unity forged from diversity. Sora and Daeho together drew the ancestral sword. As their hands touched the grip, blue light pulsed through the blade and spread outward, washing over the assembled crowd. Gasps of amazement rose from both human and Vuldari witnesses. The light seemed to carry with it a sense of connection, of understanding that transcended species barriers. For just a moment, every person in the plaza could feel what Daeho and Sora felt for each other: trust, respect, love that had grown from shared struggle and mutual admiration. With this blade as witness, Elder Taemin proclaimed, I declare you bonded in the sight of both peoples. May your union bring strength to all who know you. The crowd erupted in cheers as Daeho and Sora sealed their bond with a kiss. Petals fell like rain from balconies and rooftops, and children of both species ran forward to offer congratulations. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night. Human and Vuldari foods were served side by side, and musicians from both cultures played together, creating new melodies that pleased everyone. Speeches were given by dignitaries praising the courage it took to bridge such cultural differences. But, for Daeho, the most meaningful moment came later. During a quiet interlude when he and Sora managed to steal a few minutes alone together on a balcony overlooking the plaza. Any regrets? He asked, taking her hand in his. None, she replied. Immediately. You? Just one, Daeho said, and her expression grew concerned. I regret that it took a psychic alien queen and a magic sword to bring us together. We could have found each other so much sooner. Sora laughed, the sound light and happy. But we found each other eventually. That's what matters. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their two peoples celebrate below. Human children played with Vuldari cubs, their laughter identical despite their different appearances. Adults shared stories and food, learning about each other's customs with genuine curiosity rather than suspicion. This is just the beginning, Sora said softly. There will be other colonies, other worlds where our peoples can work together, other challenges that will require both human adaptability and Vuldari honor. Are you ready for that? Daeho asked. A lifetime of being diplomats and bridge builders? With you, I'm ready for anything. A chime from Daeho's communicator interrupted the moment. He glanced at the display and smiled. What is it? Sora asked. Message from Colonial Command. There's a new species requesting contact at the Kepler 186 system. They want to send a diplomatic team to make first contact. He looked at his new wife with a grin. Apparently, they specifically requested the human Vuldari team that killed the Ravager Queen. Our honeymoon, Sora suggested with amusement. Why not? We did our best work together when we were facing the impossible. They returned to the celebration hand in,